Okay, picking up where I left off. So, essentially, my friend said that they were coming out with a new line of CPUs. One of them being the i7, I believe it's the 6950X, which is going to be the new top of line from Intel. And I figured I might as well just wait, to get that instead of buying the 5960X, and then just have it be supplanted by, the new enthusiast chip several months later. So I guess, well, not I guess, but I thought about, so what should I do to my system for the holidays? Or, what's my gift to myself? So I figured I wanted the NZXT H450 case. I saw it, and I have to say I really liked it from the moment I saw the design. Honestly, to tell you the truth, it's mostly aesthetic. The front, there you go. The front and the top is essentially just plastic stylization. It's not aluminum. It's nothing really fancy. It's just what they did to I don't know, improve upon their current design. And I guess it's a copy of what they've done to the Phantom line in a mid-tower case. But either way, I did like it. I liked the theme. Some people called it the Batman case, but it looked good. And so I figured, oh, it's time to upgrade my case, obviously, from the Antec. And let me go get it. So I bought the case, and I said, well, instead of a few things. Obviously, this case doesn't have any standard 5¼ inch bays, so I don't have to get rid of my two optical drives. Again, no big deal. But I guess the bigger concern for me was that I still have 3 hard drives. And basically, upgrading my computers throughout the years, I've never really, it was gradually. It was never just, I'm going to build a completely new system. So as the hard drives became filled, I just replaced them, obviously a bigger one. So I believe I have 2 1.5s and 1 2 terabyte. Now, I guess the ideal solution would just ditch all of those and buy a 6 terabyte or maybe a 4 or whatever 5 terabyte they have these days. But again, that's an extra $200 when these drives work perfectly fine. So the drive bays are still kind of necessary for me to use, even though you can pull them out. But other than that, I said, what else can I do? And I figured, I'm going to do water cooling, but should I do something different? Because now this case, unlike the Antec, has the space for upper radiators and even a front radiator if you move the drive base. So I figured, all right, let me do a custom loop. I have the money, and let me see the layout. Now I have to say, I went for different ideas. Since this is essentially the H440 case, I looked what other people were doing in their H440s, and in the beginning I wasn't going to try anything too extravagant. So I went on, just Googled around for some pictures to see what they were doing. So I got to say, these components, I can't really say all of them, but I would say the Photon Reservoir over here, the XSPC Photon Reservoir, and maybe the Radiator. I basically looked at somebody's design online and said, let me get those components. The D5 pump, which again, a lot of this came from research. I didn't really know all the, default, names in the industry, water cooling industry. Like, I didn't know, there's basically 2 pumps, right? The DD5 and the D5. That's a D5 pump down there, which you can probably barely see. But so obviously there's a D5 pump, there's the Photon Reservoir. And in the beginning, I was going to go with soft tubing. I figured, I've seen hard tubing before and hardline tubing before, and it looks beautiful, and definitely I saw it aesthetically it would be much, much better to do, but I just didn't think, I just thought it'd be too complicated, and it was beyond anything. Well, it wasn't for a beginning, your first loop. At least that's what I thought. Again, but looking at overclockers.net, and especially looking at basically common YouTube channels, whether it's J2Sense, um, Hardware Canucks, or especially Singularity PCs. Even though that guy's channel, every time I watch, it's like I can't do anything close to what that guy's doing. But it inspires you. He does show you his methods. He shows you how he bends tubes. He shows you how he fills his loop. He shows you what he does. He's a very detail-oriented person and shares his secrets. So it's actually a really good channel to watch. And I gotta say, again, my friend Felix, he put me onto that. So he helped me. I guess you can say a lot of responsibility is probably because of my friend Felix. So anyway, I looked online. I got some ideas as far as what I was going to do. Now, originally, I was going to put the Reservoir over here because I don't have a picture of it, but the few designs that I saw with the H440s put the Reservoir on this side. Now, my idea was to put the Reservoir here, to have the Radiator was originally turned the other way, and then have the Reservoir go into the pump like somewhere on the side. And the other ones did it, so it looked fairly doable. I didn't think about doing this here because you have the dry base here. But obviously, if you look, this card, at least the 970 Strix, does not provide enough clearance, at least with this size Reservoir, to fit. And that really surprised me when I got the parts. I was like, wait a second, the other guy had the same Reservoir. But then come to see, he probably had a different card design. That I didn't look at the details. I figured all video cards probably sticked out more or less the same because, the brackets are standard. But apparently theirs were a little bit more low profile. And I think what they had was the reference cards. And maybe the reference cards, their cooling solutions are different than what Asus does. But in any event, so I had to move it. And so the only other place that seemed viable was over here. Or I could have laid it down and remove these drives. And I didn't want to do that. Fortunately, and I gotta say, one thing I have to say about this build, a lot, or at least this loop, a lot of things just happen to work out by happenstance. I mean, so I said, all right, can I mount this on the existing drive cages? So I removed the drive cages and see how it fit. And I see, all right, this positioning, even though it's close, it would work. Drilling 2 holes in this drive cage worked. And what I did on the upper drive cage, the other 2 holes don't fit, or at least it's above, I gotta say, this drive cage. But what I did, I just took 2 pieces of, I can show it to you, horrible cable management because I haven't done that yet over here. You probably can't see it. But if you do, there's no light. Anyway, but if you do look in here, or if you could see behind here, what I did is took 2 pieces of metal and then just tightened them up against and sort of bracketed, clamped onto the top hard drive. So this is actually in there, fairly secure. They're not tightened now because I haven't tightened them up after moving the Reservoir. But that worked out well. And so once that was positioning, and also looking at what I wanted to is because the way the H450 front design cover, the way it works, it's kind of limited what you see. It's actually diagonal. Actually, let me put it on just to give you an idea of what it looks like. The room's a mess because I've been working on this. There's the cover. You can see I still have the plastic on it, so I haven't even put this case fully together yet. This is not easy to do at one hand. All right, give me a second. You probably can see nothing. All right, so there we go. Again, plastic's still on it, so it looks horrible. But if you look, there's very limited visual space. So you get to see the NZXT logo, you get to see the CPU, and actually, putting the Reservoir here still keeps it visible, and you still can see the rest of the loop the way it came out. So I was satisfied with moving it here from here. It's actually probably more visible, or at least probably stands out more up there than it would down there. Let's see. So I guess essentially, I guess we should get. I'm just rambling here. Why did I pick hard tubing? Actually, I bought all the stuff for the soft tubing, so I have a whole bunch of unused fittings for the soft tubing. The hard tubing came at the last minute. I guess I thought initially I was going to do soft tubing, and then buy the hard tubing stuff, and then do some practice, and then do the hard tubing maybe 2 weeks later. But I was missing a few pieces because I discovered once I was putting this together, I needed an extension down here for this tube to go in, even with soft tube to go into here. I wanted the 90 here. I need an extension. So I had to order some more pieces anyway. So I said, while I'm ordering that, I had to order a pump top. I guess my idea about using the stock D5 covering was just not viable. And I said, while I'm doing that, might as well order some PETG tubing and some fittings and just have them on hand so I can just, after I make sure the loop works, I can make sure everything works. I can put that together. So it came, let's see, well, I got everything here. The soft tubing stuff, Christmas Eve. This came right after New Year's, and that's when I started on the build. Actually, I started on the build yesterday. So yeah, right after New Year's, if you think about it. And I decided, I just kept looking at videos. How do you bend hard tubing? How to route hard tubing, so on and so forth. Basically, how to bend. Looking at, I think Jay's 2 cents just came out with a video on how to bend tubing, and there's a few others. There's plenty of videos showing you how to do it. Some better than others, I gotta say. And first, I should say, even though I am particularly satisfied with how the system came out, or at least the loop came out, I should say. I haven't even started the system, so it might not even work. It's not perfect, and it's hard to tell, obviously, with this lighting. I would say the best bend is right here. There's no scoring. Well, there is some scoring, you can probably see right there. That's not because of the bend. I gotta say that actually kind of pisses me off right here. What happened is these EK fittings was, I don't know, it was just hanging around here. Maybe I pressed on it. I just don't see how that happened, but it's scored. You can see it's cylindrical. Yeah, either way, it just pissing me off because it was actually a very, very good, the bend is fine. It's just, it got scored because of this. Anyway, but this was my best bend. My first bend was this. Not this actual tube, but the first one. It didn't come out that bad, but it was some blistering. I used this heat gun from Home Depot with adjustable settings. I mean, not just high and low, but also has adjustable heat settings. So I was like, I think 12 settings. I used it on 650, and about 4 minutes it bent. The shape didn't come out bad. However, there was some blistering. So it wasn't bad for a first bend. And my idea was to bend the small ones first. And then, you get some practice, and you don't use that much tubing if you cut it up. I didn't buy that much tubing, 4 pieces of 550 millimeters, which is about 20 inches. So maybe about 40 inches of tube. I gotta say, again, there's a lot of luck in this build. So, all right, this was my first one. Not my first one, but this was my first bend, the position-wise. It didn't come out good, but I kept it there, and I cut it down to size just in case. I said, you know what, it's usable. It's not perfect. Then I did this bend, which came out very good. This was my first good bend. That I adjusted. I lowered the heat to about 450 degrees and set it on low and just waited for about 7.5 minutes and then bent it. Came out much better. My third bend was this complicated one here, which is not really too complicated. It's just 290s. But I gotta say, bending is an art. It really is, because this bend over here came out good. This bend, not so good. The first time I did it, again, this bend came out really good. Oh, it came out good, I gotta say. The second bend did not. Actually, I overshot it first. And so what I did, since this bend was good, I replaced the bad bend here with this one. So that worked out. But then I just had basically one piece of tubing left to try again. It was this one. This one, again, this bend came out pretty decent. This one here, I mean, you can probably see it's a little swollen on the side. And I think there may be a little scoring in the back, a little blistering. but it doesn't look bad. I don't have any more tubing to retry, and again, I gotta say, people who bend, especially J2 says he just does that by eye. I don't know how the hell you do that by eye. I mean, bending is fine, but doing a secondary bend by eye and getting in the right place, because there's so many, just so many variables. I mean, again, you can adjust the positioning a little bit, but still, to get it relatively accurate is not easy. Originally, I had my radiator pointed the other way. My plan was to come from here to this, and I had this CPU block turned upside down, with the EK logo facing right side up. And I just kept looking at videos and just trying to figure out how I would do the hard tubing. And, I had some ideas in mind. The only reason I didn't go with my original idea, because I just kept looking for ideas which were more satisfactory. But my first idea was to come from here, I guess, it was a front one, come down, make the 90 and go in here. And then it's going to come out here and then do something where we go into the GPU. But I just looked at it and said, it looks overly complicated. And then I just wanted to make this as simple as possible, but also I just wanted it to make it, without any offsets or anything. So I looked at other pictures and I just saw one picture where there was a perfectly aligned 90 into the CPU block. I was like, wow, that's odd. Then I looked at his block and I said, wow, well, he did that because he didn't put the block right side up. And I said, wait a second, if I can do that, that saves me a lot. I can just do a straight 90 instead of doing a dual 90 or something like that from the GPU to the CPU. So then came home, turned this upside down, and I said, wow, perfect. I got this, a perfect 90. Then I said, all right, so this gives me more options to what I can do. So I can just throw that up here. And I said, The reason I didn't stick with that, leaving the radiator in this position is because then I would have basically a long piece of tube going from here. Now, I don't have a second radiator. I plan on getting one. I know I should have one for cooling both the GPU and CPU, but I don't. So I'd have to have a long tubing going from here all the way down here back to the pump, which just bothered me. I was like, that's just too far. So I said, wait a second. If I turn it the other way, well, then this would just run to the front side of the radiator, and then the other side of the radiator would just run down to the pump. That makes sense. And I get the second radiator, which will probably be a 240, because I probably can't. I need the braces, so I can't fit a 360. I'll put a 240 here and just extend that up to the top of this radiator. Just easier, just less tubing involved. And there's, and again, I wasn't even sure. Actually, in fact, I didn't. I didn't even try it, but I wouldn't have had enough tubing to come, because I bought, again, 50 millimeters. Enough tubing to get from here. It might be centimeters. But either way, it was about 20 inches. I wouldn't have had enough tubing to get from here all the way to the pump. And what actually works out is that because this is hidden, or more or less, that the tube that goes from the end of the radiator to here is a soft tube. And it doesn't matter because, and it's hidden, not hidden, but it goes through this little gap. I wish there was more light, and into the pump over there. But again, it's hidden, so it doesn't really matter. But it also works out less tubing, and not as many complicated weird bends in a place that you're not going to see anyway. So you can see it there. It goes up on the side of the fan cage and then comes out into a 45. I don't know if you can see it over there, but it really worked out. The only thing, again, modification was needed, because turning this around, the radiator wouldn't fit 100% properly facing the other way because of this. The two fitting module over here. I don't know if it's a module, but this fitting expansion here, which doesn't obviously exist in the back, or where the fittings aren't. So it sticks out more here and runs into, you see how this is indented, blocks this indentation. So what I had to do is, my first instinct was to just basically get a Dremel these out, which you can see I have, and push it back. Now that does create a slight problem because it was about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more. You can see that the radiator or the fan space doesn't match up exactly with the fan. So there's a little blockage here. I know it's a dirty fan. My plan is to get a set of Noctua fans, but for right now, we're just going to use what I had in the Antec. And you can see over here where, again, there's a little blockage where it shouldn't be. So, and this is a little blocked here. Again, obviously it will affect the cooling somewhat, hopefully minimal, but we'll see. If anything, I can take a Dremel to it. I just didn't want to weaken the braces, because that's what these are. I mean, I could just cut them off, but I didn't want to weaken the braces or weaken the case any more than I had to. So we'll see. I mean, at this point, it works, it fits, minimal modification, but did have to be modified for you to turn around. The other thing is, fortunately, I did buy a 30 millimeter, and you may be thinking, oh, well, you bought a smaller radiator as opposed to the standard 45. The reason I did that, because originally I thought I was going to do a push-pull, and because I think somebody I heard reviewing this case said that you probably couldn't fit a push-pull configuration with 45. And if you look at it, probably it might be true, because the space here, if it was a 45, might run into some of the components, especially the RAM. So, but obviously I ended up not going with a push-pull. Well, I don't even have enough fans to do it. But my plan is not to go with a push-pull, just to add another radiator. Let me take a look. But it worked out, because I think if I used the 45, I would have much less space here. Again, I gotta say, the build works. There's a lot of close calls in this build. For example, the fill port. It's right, there's only maybe ½ an inch between the fill port here, which I'll have to take this out anyway because we plan to fill this up. And it's even, again, I'm doing this one-handed, but it's not easy. The fill port hits the tubing up here. I mean, it can be done, but it's, just one of those weird complications that we have. Again, I'll take it off. So that was a close call, but worked. Close call here. If you look, the video card. Sun's going down. My lighting's going. And this is on my phone. So it's one of those things where if you look, it's very close to the video card, and I don't have any custom sleeving, but also there's probably going to be a close call putting the 6-pin back in. But again, first things first, get the loop working, then I can get some cable extensions or something. And so let's see, anything else that was interesting? There's a few interesting things which came out to be, I guess, close calls. Those two which I mentioned. Fortunate that I chose a 30 millimeter for the reason I told you, but it worked out. This spacing was close. The pump is very close. With the pump top, I put some bottom mounts and drilled a hole to clamp it in. It was close. This tube, I gotta say, it was a leftover tube from the bad bend I had up here. I cut off that piece, and I figured that I could use it for the straight. Now, the reason why it's fortunate is that the remaining tube, I have to say, fit exactly. I thought it was actually longer, not by much, by maybe ½ an inch. But when I fit it in there, it was like virtually, maybe even a little short by a millimeter or two. But it goes past the O-ring. But it was like a perfect fit. I mean, like what was left, because I had no more tubing. And I think the only thing they sell at Micro Center around me is acrylic, and I think they're out of, and they are out of stock. I just came from there. So yeah, I mean, I should have bought extra, but the tubing that I used was basically exactly how much I needed. So that was kind of interesting. Anything else? There's probably some other things I want to say, but I've rambled long enough. So here's the setup. We have our pump back here. with a Molex connector. And so basically I'm figuring there's a power and a ground. I made up this little contraption with a power brick that I got from my job. These are common 12-volt power bricks that we use for set-top boxes. It goes to basically a two-way switch, and you can see right now it's powering this old Antec fan, which has similar just a power and ground, and it's 12-volt. Looking at the packaging, the pump can use anywhere from 8 to 24 volts, so we're well within standard specifications. So you can see it turns on the fan. It's working, so that's good. All right. I know it's a long video, me rambling about nothing, but anyway. So we're going to use this to start and stop our pump. So let's do it. All right. Take that off. All right. We got some cheap ass distilled water from Key Food. And just to mention, that was like $1 something. It just makes me wonder, like, how do they make money? I mean, the distilling process sounds kind of not complicated, but you know, like it takes some type of labor, production labor. And I don't know how they make money by selling water for $1, a gallon of water for $1. But basically, I'm questioning. I mean, is it actually distilled? Yeah. So, or how much is it distilled? Who knows? All right, so I don't want to plug this in. Actually, you know what? Let me not actually plug the unit in module in itself because I don't want the pump to run, even though I'm fairly sure it's off. But who knows since I'm doing this live. All right, I'm going to put this down so I can plug this stuff in. So, again, I'm not a YouTuber, so don't expect anything any perfection going on. Alright, so I did go and buy the Primo Fill syringe. I also did research, obviously. Well, not obviously. No, actually, not obviously. I did think, how am I going to drain this thing if I have to? I mean, one thing I got to say is that while I got to say, this is, let me not be a little presumptuous. I don't know if this is the most efficient way to fit this type of tubing layout in this build, but I will say this. With the limited space that you have in this case, you don't have too many options. So I think what I did was pretty decent. All right, I'm going to stop it actually. I'm going to stop the video here and then I'll pick up again while we're actually filling up the reservoir.